Now, what we're talking about for the people that are uninformed is the idea that some of the structures in ancient Egypt are far older.
In many ways, it was the mystery of the Sphinx that really broke everything open. It brought everything to the public attention.
The ancient Egyptians left a remarkable legacy, including colossal structures such as the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx. For a long time, many aspects of these monuments remain mysterious, leading researchers to form inaccurate theories about them. Popular podcaster Joe Rogan has been hosting guests who reveal hidden truths about the enigmatic Sphinx, shedding light on the history and age of these incredible structures.
That it's entirely possible that there were many different eras of construction in Egypt and that there are some structures that are far, far older than we think.
Yeah, exactly. And this, what I was alluding to, is this really opened up with our work on redating the Great Sphinx.
Yeah.
In this video, we'll dive into the fascinating world of the ancient sphinxes and uncover the hidden truths about their age and significance. And let's unravel the secrets of these enigmatic structures together. Today, for a long time, many aspects of these monuments remain mysterious, leading researchers to form inaccurate theories about them. But with recent revelations on the Joe Rogan podcast, we're taking a closer look at the history and age of these awe-inspiring structures.
That the Sphinx had been weathered by rain, I would say precipitation, as a geologist, not wind and sand. So this, if it were true, and it is true, would put the Sphinx back to a much earlier period, which would tie in with Schwaller's work and John Anthony West's subsequent work, that there were indications that dynastic Egypt as we know it, going back to about 3000 BC, was really a legacy of what I call now an earlier cycle of civilization.
Egypt's cultural heritage. Egypt is a country with a rich history, and its people take pride in their cultural heritage. Recently, the North African nation reopened the 1.7-mile-long Avenue of the Sphinxes in Luxor, which is lined with over 1,000 Sphinx and Ram statues. The path connects the temples of Luxor and Karnak and had been buried beneath layers of sand for centuries. Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities hosted a lavish ceremony, attended by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, to celebrate the reopening. Discovery and controversy. The Avenue of the Sphinxes was discovered in 1949 during excavations near Luxor Temple by archaeologists Zakaria Ghanem and Mohammed Abdel-Qadir. However, the Great Sphinx of Giza is arguably the most famous of all the sphinxes in Egypt. Joe Rogan is known for hosting guests with unconventional opinions, so it was no surprise when he invited Professor Robert Schoch to discuss the origins and age of the Great Sphinx of Giza. Schoch, an expert Egyptologist, presented evidence suggesting the Sphinx is much older than conventional scientists believe.
Some of the very old Egyptologists in the late 19th, early 20th century had actually suggested that just the way it looks, the feel of the Sphinx, not based on hard evidence really, that maybe it was older than the pyramids, that maybe it goes back earlier. So I felt that it wasn't all said and done and, pat and sound, that the Egyptologists necessarily knew what they were talking about in modern times, because some of the earlier Egyptologists, who they held in very high respect supposedly, had said different things.
The mythical Sphinx. A sphinx is a mythical creature with a lion's body and a human's head, and it appears in Egyptian, Asian, and Greek mythology. In ancient Egypt, the sphinx was a spiritual guardian, often depicted as a male with a pharaoh's headdress. Sphinxes were commonly included in tomb and temple complexes. The Avenue of the Sphinxes in Luxor and Karnak is a prime example of such a site. Other examples include the granite Sphinx statue of female pharaoh Hatshepsut at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and the large alabaster Sphinx at the Ramesside Temple in Memphis, Egypt.
What was your
really
first
did.
impression?
Because my first impression of the Sphinx was, now that I saw it on the ground, in person, there was something wrong with the Egyptological dating. Because when you look at the Sphinx, As a geologist with a geological eye, this was not weathered by wind and sand. This was not desert erosion and weathering that I saw on the Sphinx, the body of the Sphinx, which is very difficult to tell because it's been heavily repaired and reworked, but particularly on the walls of what are known as the Sphinx enclosure. The Sphinx enclosure is important because it preserves a lot of the details. And if the audience has not been to Egypt, they should realize that when they carved the Sphinx, it's all solid bedrock, only the head initially was above the ground surface.
Sphinxes around the world. The Sphinx was later incorporated into Asian and Greek cultures, where it took on different attributes, such as wings and a serpent's tail. Interestingly, the original Egyptian name for the Great Sphinx remains unknown, as the term Sphinx comes from Greek mythology, which dates back to nearly 2,000 years after the statue's construction. The role of the Great Sphinx during the Old Kingdom, approximately 2613–2181 BC, is also unclear, as few texts discuss the statue. However, by the end of the Old Kingdom, the statue had faded into the desert landscape and remained unnoticed for centuries. The Great Sphinx is not only an architectural marvel, but it also has inscriptions between its paws on a pink granite slab that tell an incredible story. According to legend, Prince Thutmose, son of Amenhotep, fell asleep near the Sphinx, and in his dream, the statue called itself Hor-Makhet and bemoaned its state of disarray. The Sphinx struck a deal with the young prince. If he cleared away the sand and restored it, the statue would help him become pharaoh. When Thutmose did become Pharaoh Thutmose IV, he fulfilled his side of the bargain by instituting a Sphinx-worshipping cult among his subjects.
When you look at the Sphinx, and other geologists have looked at this as well, they did not just chip away at the rock to carve the body. More or less, you could have chipped away at the rock with pickaxes and that type of thing, shoveled out chips of rock in baskets. That would have been the easy way. What they did is they carved out huge blocks of stone. And when I say huge, we're talking multi-ton, tens of tons, some of them maybe over 50 tons or more of limestone. They moved those due east of the Sphinx and built what is now known as the Sphinx Temple, which is still there in ruinous condition, and the Valley Temple. So you had these two huge temples. And what is interesting, a lot of people don't realize this or they don't think about it. I think those constructions, which are contemporary with the oldest portion of the Sphinx, in some ways are more impressive if you think about the technology and what went into constructing them than the age of the Sphinx itself. So it's not just the Sphinx, it's also these limestone temples that are associated with it and were built contemporaneously.
The Sphinx's journey through time. The figure of the Sphinx was immortalized in statues, paintings, and reliefs across Egypt, symbolizing royalty and the power of the sun. Despite Thutmose's efforts, the Sphinx was eventually forgotten again, its body eroded, and its face harmed by the passage of time. Some stories say that Napoleon's troops shot off the statue's nose with a cannon when they arrived in Egypt in 1798, but 18th century drawings indicate that the nose vanished much earlier. It's more likely that a Sufi Muslim in the 15th century purposefully destroyed the nose to protest idolatry. The Sphinx was buried in sand up to its shoulders until the early 1800s, when a Genoese adventurer named Captain Giovanni Battista Caviglia led a team of 160 men to try, but ultimately failed to dig it out. However, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette was able to clear some of the sand from around the sculpture. And in the 19th and 20th centuries, another French archaeologist, Émile Barrès, made another large excavation push. It wasn't until the late 1930s, however, that Egyptian archaeologist Selim Hassan was able to free the creature from its sandy tomb. Debate on the Sphinx's age. The Giza Sphinx is undoubtedly old, but the exact age of the statue is up for debate. The most popular and widely accepted theory is that it was built for Pharaoh Khafre around 2603 to 2578 BC. However, Professor Robert Schoch, a renowned Egyptologist, shocked the world in the early 90s when he recast the date of the Great Sphinx of Giza by several thousand years, based on geological evidence contradicting the accepted dating. This groundbreaking theory sparked a long-standing debate among them. As you can see, the age and origins of the Great Sphinx remain an enigma, with inscriptions, legends, and theories surrounding its history. The Sphinx has been the subject of fascination, debate, and even controversy, making it one of the most captivating and mysterious structures in the world. What do you think about the age and history of the Great Sphinx? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing other mysteries from around the world.